Welcome back to another episode of Questions with Crocker with me, Dr. Crocker, and my husband, Shane.
Hello.
What are you doing with your neck there? You feeling okay?
I'm old.
The weather's been better in Texas, so
Yes.
You've been golfing a fair amount. How's the game going?
It's trending in the right direction.
So the funny thing is we got a couple Amazon packages the other day, and my daughter...
There's a couple more coming, actually.
Oh my gosh. My daughter said, "What'd you order, Mom?" I'm like, "I didn't order anything." And we got them out, and it wasn't one pair of shoes. It was 2 pairs of shoes. And they're special because why? Because they look like regular running shoes.
Technically, they are running shoes.
Okay. But
I need them to walk because I walk 9 holes.
I agree you walk 9 holes. You're not a professional golfer.
I agree.
So 4 pairs of shoes to golf in seems a little
Only
excessive.
2 for golfing. The other 2 are just regular tennis shoes. They were on sale.
It's like me getting a lot of pairs of heels, and it's like I never wear heels and go out anywhere. So there's really no reason for it. But the funniest thing was our daughter looked at the shoes and she's like, "Running shoes? Why does Dad need running shoes?"
It's a very valid question.
So she doesn't have much faith in our athletic ability as parents in general.
It's a very valid question.
Oh my gosh, so funny. So we just got off a really good weekend. For those of you that are just listening for the first time, welcome. I am an emergency veterinarian, but we also own a small animal general practice together in Texas, and you help me run and manage it. So this weekend we did a marketing event, and we went out to a local festival, set up a booth, handed out cards and treats, met a lot of people. And I think it was like almost 200 people that we handed out cards to, which is great. And it's always like good team building doing that
Have we done the math to figure out how much it costs per person to hand out that card?
Only the finance guy would ask that question. But no, I did calculate it. And if we get like 2 new clients out of it, it's worth it. Like that's how valuable these events can be.
I need to see this fuzzy math.
It's not fuzzy math.
I think it's fuzzy math.
This
is some of that new Common Core math.
I will get you the data next time. Oh, Common Core. Let's not even get into that right now. So anyways, it was a good event, but we had a lot going on that day, and it was a super busy day. And I remember at the end of the day, we looked at each other and we said, this was just a really great day because one, I went out there with my son, with our son, I guess.
Depends on who's claiming for the day.
Yeah. I went out there with our son and we set everything up. And it was really fun to take my 7-year-old. We unloaded the truck. I had like a wagon and he was helping, keep the canopy and the tables from falling off of everything. And then we got out there and we set the canopy up together, which was interesting with a 7-year-old. I'm like, hold it. And it's like lifting him off the ground. And he was very helpful though. And he enjoyed it. And at the end, he's like, "Mom, was I the best helper ever?" And I said, "You were." And then we ran to volleyball, watched volleyball for 2 hours, and then ran back out there to help the team. And our number one salesman was Corbin, our son.
Always.
He rocked it. The kid has never met a stranger.
No.
And he took stickers and went and gave them to every child at the festival and told the parents, "You need to come to our booth." And he's already got it down because basically giving someone something free then makes them feel like they need to do what you say. And so people wandered over to us and said, Corbin said we had to come over here. And it was great. And he had a baseball game in the middle of it. And so we told him, we need to head to baseball. And he didn't want to leave. He was having so much fun. And it was just really great to see him kind of embracing. I mean, we were essentially working on the weekend for the hospital, but just embracing the experience and enjoying it. Our daughter came out. She was a little more cool, calm, and collected than him. But it was a good weekend, good sports, good times, did a little bit of work. It's kind of the perfect weekend, in my opinion.
I'll take it.
Yes. And then hopefully we actually get some new clients out of it. So you don't shut us down in the future when we want to do one of the...
We're going to look at this math pretty carefully.
We're going to do the data and talk about it at our next finance meeting. When is our next meeting, by the way? Have you looked at anything recently?
No.
So I looked yesterday. We just added a new veterinarian. She's only on her 2nd week, and she killed it yesterday. She did awesome. The numbers were great. And we even had a surgery cancel, and she still did really, really well. So very excited to see that. She's been out over 10 years and is very capable. And it's just nice to know that there's somebody there that can continue to help and grow our clientele and service the community. So
I would agree.
It was a good weekend overall. I really enjoyed it. we answer questions on this podcast about veterinary related things, about practice ownership, things about being parents and working in vet med, and pretty much anything else. We're pretty open and honest. And I thought that the question that I got was a good one. So we had Jules Mintz, who wanted to know, what are the things you should consider when you're picking your first job and you're considering your first job? What should you think about? What should you ask? And this is actually a question I get really commonly because I talk at vet schools, but I thought it'd be good to get your perspective. So first I want to know, what was your first job ever, Shane Crocker?
First real job?
Well,
I got it after college.
Like the first job you got paid for.
Crocker Farms.
Your granddad actually paid you?
Oh, yeah.
I thought they just it was just sweat equity.
No, we showed up in the morning, went and worked for a couple hours, came back and ate breakfast, went and worked for a couple hours, came back and ate lunch, and then swam the rest of the day.
Didn't you tell me that you used to drive the truck, but you couldn't actually reach the pedals?
100%.
I mean, that's the way to do it.
They put it in gear and jump out, and we would drive it in between hay rails.
And you
bills.
would steer it, basically, but you couldn't
and
actually
reach. Jump back in to stop it.
Sounds so safe.
Mm-hmm.
That was what we did back in the day.
I mean, it was an open pasture. Not a lot you could hit.
I know. I wonder if people still do that now or if they're worried.
I'm sure.
I'm sure. For it. No. Okay, so what was your first real paying job after college? You got your degree. What'd you do?
Went back to a small community bank in my hometown and did loans for people that were significantly older than me.
Was this when people basically brought in the cash from under their mattresses and said I need a loan for stuff, or was it? They
wouldn't necessarily bring cash in, but yeah, they would come in and ask for loans for whatever, and we'd do all our own underwriting and give them a loan. And
you knew everybody, right?
Yeah.
Was there one that wanted a lawnmower or something?
That was the only loan that I ever lost.
What does that mean? You didn't get paid back?
No, my guy died.
Oh, no. Okay, now I feel bad.
You feel bad, don't you? It was an old guy. I felt bad for him, so I gave him a loan for a lawnmower, and he passed away.
Oh, well, I mean, that was...
He made a couple of payments before he passed away.
That was worthwhile. It's not like he meant to not pay. Oh, my goodness. It must be my dark humor side from emergency medicine that I can laugh at that.
Everything else we collected on that I'm aware of anyways.
Well, that's good. That's good. So you were good at handing out loans. So how did you pick that job? What was the reason you went back there?
I don't really know, to be honest with you.
I mean, was it comfortable? Did they offer you really good salary?
I worked for them during the summer, and then they basically paid for my last 2 years of school to come back and work there. So,
I mean, those are really great reasons to go back.
But I mean, it's a finance degree, and they funded me through school, and actually got me to work part-time at another bank while I was in school. So I got paid a couple hours a day to work.
So what I'm hearing is they developed a relationship with you.
Yes.
They supported you early on in your career. And then also you already knew them.
Yes.
You knew the culture. You were comfortable with them. And it was in a location that you wanted to be in and were familiar with, which I also think is important to look at the location that you're going to.
I would agree with all that.
Was any of it financially motivated, or could you have gotten higher paying jobs elsewhere?
No, I could have got higher paying jobs elsewhere, but I would have had to leave or maybe do something I didn't really want to do. I wanted to be a banker at that time.
Okay. What are you doing now? No,
yeah, I know. Now I don't do anything with banking.
Oh, that's funny. So my first paying job out of vet school, I guess, was my internship. But that was really, I mean, I got paid $30,000 and worked my little booty off. Learned a ton. Happy about it. But my first official job was as an equine ambulatory vet in this area. So came back intentionally to be close to family. We had decided after being away for so long, we did actually want to live close to family. And so came back here, and there was only so many options for equine work. But I, too, had kind of established a relationship beforehand with them. I knew the practice. I knew the people. I knew the clientele. Was very comfortable with them and really wanted to do ambulatory work in general. So became the first female veterinarian of this practice and got paid $60,000 and really didn't have any benefits either. But I really loved the job and I loved what I was doing and I learned a lot. And it was I think, a really great first job. Obviously, life stage things changed, eventually made a transition, which we'll talk about in a future podcast. But I think there's a couple important take-homes from our own experiences and then from a lot of people's experiences that I, hear from with new grads and veterinarians. I think statistically right now, a majority of people actually leave their first job in veterinary medicine within 2 years.
That's probably across the board for every job, is my guess. Yeah.
Do you think that's a cultural or a generational thing?
Yeah, all the above. I mean, if you think about like our grandparents, they didn't leave a corporation. They went to work there and they stayed there for 30 years and worked their way up to different positions. And the company took care of them. Maybe they had a pension set aside for them, so they took care of them. And the employees continued to work and grow inside the company. It really didn't look elsewhere. But culturally, that's all really changed now. To really elevate in a company, a lot of times you have to jump to a competitor, like company and grow from there. So
I agree. It definitely shows that your salary will rise faster if you're willing to make a change. And sometimes you just don't have any upward mobility options at a practice or a place. And so you have to make a change because of that. But let's talk a little bit about the first job. So one of the biggest things I tell people is I personally would not want to go work somewhere that I haven't visited.
Agreed.
I think that there's a lot of value in actually visiting a practice, talking to the people that are there, and getting to see the culture and the clientele and the type of medicine they practice firsthand.
Agreed.
And, you'll have people maybe make you job offers. And I would say right now, there's such a need that if someone is making you a job offer, they should also be willing to have you come out and visit and pay for that experience. We did that with a veterinary technician that we hired recently. We flew her in from Colorado and she came into a working interview and we paid for everything because we wanted her to see what the practice was like. We wanted to make sure she was a good fit with our team. So any practice that is looking to hire you but doesn't have an interest in you actually visiting the practice or seeing it or meeting the people is a little bit of a red flag to me, because I think if you really believe strongly in your team and your culture, you're going to feel that's a necessary step. Do you agree?
I would agree. And even from the hiring side, I mean, there's that old saying that you hire slow and fire fast. And part of that hiring slow process is to make sure that you do your own diligence and make sure this is going to be a good fit culturally, not just on paper, but I'd want to bring them in and make sure everybody kind of clicks and it's a good fit, and that there's going to be opportunity for a bright future for everybody. So yes. I think it's beneficial for both parties to do that.
Yeah, especially if the team is smaller. The smaller 100%. The team is, the more you really need to make sure people get along, because you're not going to have, a lot of options for people that you can talk to and you can spend time with. So I feel very strongly that you should visit any practice that you're considering going to. Now, when it comes to looking at maybe going back to a practice that you used to work at or used to be a part of, I think there's pluses and minuses. I think there's value in, again, knowing the place and knowing the people. I think if you were originally a technician and you're going back as a doctor, sometimes that can be a tough transition because they've shown that you actually, once you've met somebody in a certain position and they see you in a certain light, it is hard to change the way that they see you.
Does that change over time, though? So, like, maybe you graduate vet school and don't go back the first year because you're still kind of young and new. But if you go work somewhere else and come back like 5 years later, does that statistically change?
I think that your confidence level changes. And so the fact that you believe more strongly in like who you are and you believe that you're a good veterinarian, then probably the respect factor is easier to get, right? But as a new grad and you're going to a practice where you used to not know as much as these people, and now you're trying to kind of dictate things that need to happen in the practice and protocols. That can be hard for some people to take when they remember that they taught you how to do, an IV catheter placement. I'm not saying it's right. I just know that that's how our brains work and our minds are trained. So if you're going to go back to a place that you originally worked at before vet school, you just really need to know that your leadership and your management is really in support of you. And then also that a majority of the team is going to welcome you back in that role. Or else I think that it can be a really tricky transition overall. The other thing, obviously, to look at, which I think a lot of people expect me to talk more about, like salary and benefits. But I really think it's important to look at, where do you want to live and what do you like to do outside of practice? I will talk to so many people and say, what do you want to do? And they'll say small animal general practice. And that's it. That's all they've thought about. Well, do you want to live in a more rural place? Do you want to live in a place that practices a certain level of medicine? Do you want to live somewhere that has like a CT scanner for their dentals? Or are you okay with not having dental x-rays? Do you want to live somewhere that's cold, somewhere that's warm? Are you an outdoorsy person? Do you need culture? Do you need like food? Are you a foodie? You know, like I could never live somewhere that doesn't have many options to eat. Like I enjoy going out. I enjoy doing those things.
I think that probably helps with minimizing burnout as well, right? So if you're culturally really want to be in a big city where you can walk down to restaurants, but you take a job out in rural West Texas somewhere because they're going to pay you more, that probably is going to lead to potentially burnout because you don't have things to do outside of work. So I agree. I think knowing where you want to go and what you want to do outside of the four walls of the hospital is very, very, very important. Well,
and also being close to or knowing you'll be somewhere that you can establish a support network is really important also. Because even if you don't have a partner or don't have children where you need help in that regard, you still need some sort of connection. You still need somebody that if you're having a rough day, you can talk to them. Or if you get stuck at work and you need somebody to let their dogs out, they can do that. I mean, there's a lot of stress that comes with being in this job, and having people that you can rely on outside of the practice, I think is, again, a vital part of being sustainable long-term in this career.
I would agree.
So looking at location, looking at culture, looking at support system, I think are all really important. And then you get more into kind of the nuts and bolts of what type of practice do you want to be in? And I think there's some questions you can ask to kind of figure out what that practice is like. I always like to ask people, why are they adding a team member? Like, have they grown and they just need somebody new, or have the last 5 associates quit all of a sudden? I definitely want to know who are the longest standing employees and how long have they been there. If you have people that, the longest a technician has been there is 2 years, I think that's a red flag. You really want your support team to be invested in the practice too, unless it's a brand new practice, obviously. And so I think that's something that you should check off. What is the staffing ratio, depending on how you like to practice? Like, I need to be in a practice that has a high vet to support staff ratio. Now, when I was in equine ambulatory, I knew that I was going to be in a truck by myself, and I was fine with that. And I trained during my internship to do things by myself or to communicate with owners what I needed. But I think equine practice is a little different in efficiency in general. I definitely was faster anytime I had somebody with me to help, but I still think small animal, it's vital when you're in a practice to have a good support staff and a well-trained team. So asking about that is going to be something that should be on your list. And then I think asking about, how they handle conflict, how often they meet as a team, things like that. Are they open to schedule changes? And just feeling out if they're going to be a good fit for you personality-wise is also important. When I joined the small animal general practice I eventually joined, I really loved it because the doctors were really big on CE. We were really big on coming together after and talking about what we had learned. And they were so open to new information, changes. And even though the practice had been there a long time, it felt like a really modern, new...
Yeah, and that was cultural from the top down, right? I mean, That was the original owner that had a huge passion for that. And I mean, that just creates a culture where people want to share and learn and continue to grow.
Yeah. And then do you also remember before I took the job what they did? Do you remember how we met?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You were doing, taking care of their backyard pony.
Yes. I was taking care of their donkeys and I saw their house, I saw their family, I saw their lives. And then on top of that, when they were talking about me working there, they actually said, we want to take you and your husband to lunch because they wanted to meet you too. And they wanted to know, what you were about. And they weren't just caring about like me and what I could do for them as a practice, but they really cared about like who we were as people.
I agree.
And they felt like character was an important part of that. And so I appreciated them wanting.
Yeah, I think they knew they could teach you how to be a small animal vet.
Yes.
They wanted to make sure that you were a good cultural fit, that the personalities aligned, that you could do some of the intangible things that maybe other vets can't do because they could teach you how to practice, quality medicine.
Small animal medicine. Yeah. And they did. I mean, they said to me, we can teach you how to do a spay. We can't really teach you how to communicate with clients. That's a harder thing to teach. But since they had already experienced me as their veterinarian, they felt comfortable with that part of things. So I do think getting really to know the leadership, to know the people you're working with, and if it is important to you that it be a practice that your partner feels comfortable visiting you
100%.
or being a part of things, then, feeling that out early on is important. So let's get into now more the things that everyone kind of talks about right off the bat. So salary, benefits.
Let's pause for a second. I think the important thing right now is to know that when you're looking for your first job, to don't worry about this piece yet. Go figure out the other parts first. And then this is just icing on the cake, or if you're really struggling between two practices that meet all the other requirements, here's maybe the differentiator. That makes sense?
No, I think that's an important point to make. And that's why we talked about all the other things first, because I really don't think you should look at it and say, oh, this practice is going to pay me this much. This is my front runner. I really think it's important to look at the other factors, because most practices are going to be competitive salary-wise. And really, if you're choosing a practice just off of salary and benefits,
you're not going to be happy potentially.
I mean, I think you can really get in a position where you don't have the proper culture, mentorship. You really need to have a good foundation as a 100%. New veterinarian. And that's part of why I think people are leaving.
Now, we're not saying to go find your ideal job and take it so low that you can't pay your bills.
Correct.
I mean, you have to make a certain number to survive. We're not saying
you need to know your value.
Exactly right.
Yes. You need to know your value. You need to know what you're bringing to the table. But I think just because you graduate, you can't expect you're going to find like this perfect package and they're going to check all the boxes too. And you really need to look at all aspects of it. But I would say, some people are very financially motivated, but there's a lot of other factors that go into you being happy in a practice. And your salary is actually a small portion of that when you look at it statistically. As a veterinarian, we're not talking about support staff here for anybody who's a support team member and is talking about how underpaid they are in our industry. That's a whole nother conversation.
Yep.
So if you look at kind of the basics, obviously salary is one portion of it. And you can look at, either salary as a whole, or some practices are base salary plus production, and then some are just pro sal. So production based. Do you think there is one that is best for new grads over others? Because of course I have an opinion.
Yeah, I think it really depends on the individual. I mean, I think your personality, my personality, any type of production base is going to be best, because you're going to be driven to not have a cap on your ability to make X, right? The harder you work, the more patients you see, you're going to have the potential to make more money. So I think for some personalities, that definitely works. For a new grad that may be a little bit slower, that maybe is going to ask a lot of questions, maybe is a little bit uncomfortable, they may be better off starting with some type of base salary that they're comfortable with, and then maybe negotiate some type of production going forward.
Yeah, most of the data that has come out has shown that new graduate veterinarians want just a base salary. They want to kind of know what they're going to take home each month and, base their life around that. And I think that that's okay. And I do agree with you.
I would negotiate something I knew I could live off of, but didn't have a cap to it. So, yeah, maybe a small salary that I knew is my base, but I have the potential to make significantly more than that. And base everything off your base, right? All your rent and your utilities and your housing or your car, make sure you can pay all that, but know that the upside's there for the harder you work.
I think the upside is really important. And a lot of people disregard that with a first job. They really think about, what is my salary going to be? And that's the only thing. I would encourage you to ask more questions. How much are your associates that have been here 2 years making? How much of your associates that have been here 5 years making? I see some practices offering really high salaries off the bat, but then you stay pretty stagnant the whole time, right? And there's no ability to grow that. And to me, that is a little bit of like a bait and switch. So like, we're going to pay you this much, but then over time, you potentially could make more, right, as you grow your skill set with certain models. And so asking those questions is definitely important. So salary is one factor. I think the other part is the benefits side of things. So we have the set benefits that most people think about, which is getting your, licenses covered, your DEA. If you had to guess, how much would you think a DEA?
I want to say like $800 or something, wasn't it? $600.
I think it's $600.
Yeah. I know we've written a lot of those checks, but
Yeah, and it's good for a couple years, which is good, but it's not cheap. So you have that, and you have your state license that you have to renew. You usually have like a USDA license if you do Coggins and do different things. And then any like additional certifications that you carry, you usually have to renew those in some way, shape, or form. And I think CE should be included in that. You need CE to maintain your license, and that should be the responsibility of the practice owner to help you with that. Now, with a CE stipend or budget, I think it should include, the actual amount that you're going to pay for them to get their CE, travel, eat, all that, but then also some paid days off most of the time because you have to actually go. And I know there's some people that'll say like, I can't travel for CE because I can't afford to. And I think that is sad that that's the case, right? I really want them to be able to travel. And sometimes the good CE is not local, or what you need is not local. So those should be a part of just kind of the basic package. I think that, liability insurance also is usually covered by the practice owner and should be something that they cover, pretty standard. Now you get into medical benefits, and I think the younger generation expects that insurance is just a benefit that should be there. And I think part of that is the lack of understanding how expensive it actually is to carry health insurance as a practice.
Yeah, I've got my opinions on this. Good or bad?
Well, what are your opinions? We recently started.
So my opinion is, as a young veterinarian that is relatively healthy, you can get potentially cheaper underwriting by yourself than a small business owner can trying to underwrite their entire team that maybe only 20% of the employees actually want insurance coverage. They may get it through their spouse or whatever. So as a young veterinarian, I don't think you should be afraid to say, hey, I know you don't have medical benefits, but let's carve out a stipend where you pay me on a monthly basis specifically for me to go out to the open market and get my own insurance, because you can get your own insurance probably cheaper than a practice can try to put that together for you. Now, as a practice owner, if you get in a scenario like we had where there's multiple people that do want insurance, then you find a way to make it happen. But that's not always the case. And I wouldn't let that, as a young veterinarian, limit me to taking a job that checks all the other boxes just because they don't have a medical insurance package.
And the thing is, it 100% does.
I know.
I guarantee you that people go through and they look at job postings, and if it doesn't say health insurance, that they pass it by.
And I think that's just because they're scared, right?
It's because they're scared, but also think about it. They now can be on their parents' insurance until they're 26, right? So they've never had to deal with insurance or think about it until they're 26 years old. So then the idea of like finding their own insurance it's overwhelming for them.
I get it, but these are some of the most intelligent people in the world.
I agree.
All they have to do is call a broker, and they probably have brokers that are friends, and say, hey, look, I want my own medical insurance. Give me some options and help me walk through this.
I agree.
As smart as these people are, they could learn that in 30 days.
I agree. And they're doctors, and they're doing, life-saving things on pets, and they're communicating like very important information to, other adults. But I think it's a generational thing. One, we expect this is going to be handled for us. And two, they haven't had to deal with it because someone's always taking care of it. And whether that's good or bad, it's the reality. And honestly, if you're a practice owner and you want to hire, you need to either be really good at explaining the stipend portion of it. We're not saying that owners shouldn't help out some way with health insurance, but you need to understand, explain the health stipend portion of it, or you need to provide health insurance. From a marketing, trying to hire people standpoint, I think it's a must.
Completely agree.
So if health insurance is something that you personally...
And if you can't tell in this podcast, we've had many deep conversations about this.
Gosh, I cannot even explain to you all the conversations. But we finally have it in place for our team, and It's very exciting. But I do think if it's something that's have to have, then that's just something that and that's something you have to communicate with whatever practice you're going to. All we're saying is maybe don't completely disregard a great practice that you love every other portion of it because of the health insurance
100%
factor. The other things that, a lot of people look at benefit-wise is vacation. I think that's a huge one. And me as a private practice owner, I think that's something I have a lot of flexibility on. A lot of larger companies are going to have very standard vacation packages, or you have to accumulate so many days to use them. I love being able to say, how much vacation do you think you need? Let's talk about that. Let's see if we can work it out. Let's see if I can give you that many weeks, of paid vacation, because we want you to be healthy emotionally. We want you to be rested mentally. We think you will do your best work in the hospital if you get that. So I think that it's a must to have vacation, and you have to figure out how much vacation you really want or need. And then we have it where you have to use it up before the end of the year because we want you to take your vacation.
Yeah, it's a use it or lose it, right? And it's not because we're trying to pocket money. We want people to take vacation so they come back refreshed.
Yes.
As simple as that.
I think that it is an important part of owning a successful practice and having the right team in place. So other than that, what other things
Creative schedules. You
one.
talk a lot about that. I mean, that's very important. If you don't want to work Mondays for whatever reason, if there's a practice willing to negotiate and be open to a creative schedule, that's huge for a lot of people.
Actually, if you want to know more about creative schedules, we did a podcast recently on it. So check out Questions with Crocker. And we talked all about it. But I agree. That is something that if you say, I really need a day off during the week, and this is why it's important to me, or it's important to me to, I'm not a morning person. I want to know if maybe I can shift my days back a little bit. Having those conversations, I think, is something that transparency can help overall.
What does the future look like? I mean, having those conversations early on and knowing that you're going to work for maybe an older practice owner that at some point wants to sell maybe to associates and you want to be an owner, that's a big factor.
Yes.
If it's a younger veterinarian that really has no desire to bring in partners and you want to be an owner pretty quick, may not be a good fit.
Right.
So just knowing that piece of it and what your desires are of the future.
And some of the things that I think maybe people don't talk about, and honestly would be considered illegal to talk about if the employer brought it up, is your goals for your family. So I've always been really open and honest about, I want to have children. We were married 7 years before we decided to have kids, but I definitely told my first boss, this is something that will happen and is important. And we talked about maternity leave and disability and all that. So I would say if that is something that is in your future, asking questions about what that would look like and whether they've had other vets in the practice, go through pregnancy. And
that's a good point. So as a young female veterinarian coming out, most of them probably want to avoid that because they don't want that to be a limiting factor to be hired.
Right.
But let's say within 2 years, they decide they want to start a family. And then you have to go out and maybe find another job or whatever because it just didn't work out culturally. You got to ask that question up front. If you know at some point you want to start a family, understand where they're at. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having that conversation early.
Because from our experience, you can have a wonderful practice and have a practice you really like, but that can be something that can definitely blow up a relationship between an owner and a veterinarian. So I like just being open and honest about it. And if they say well, there's no paid maternity leave, you get 8 weeks and that's it. I hired you for this job. It might not be a good fit for you if those are things that are important to you. So I do think that it's a question that needs to be asked.
And I think probably one of the most important things is understanding that you're interviewing that practice probably more than they're interviewing you, especially in this day and age. So don't be afraid to ask questions or negotiate stuff that's important to you because you have, quite honestly, the upper hand at this point.
You do. And speaking of things important to them, another thing I want to mention is social media. So I personally, because of the fact that I have a social media platform, I think it's important to educate owners online. It would be important to me to go to a practice that is okay with that and to go to a practice that embraces that level of transparency within the practice, that has a policy in place that makes the team feel comfortable, but also allows me to share who I am and what's important to me. I don't think I could ever work at a practice that has a no social media policy, and that is a personal thing for me. But I do think that's a question that would need to be asked too for a first job, if that is something that is important to you.
Yeah, if it's important for sure.
Okay. I don't know that I had anything else big on my list for first job considerations. So we have location, culture, and obviously the type of practice you want to go to, the level of medicine that they do. We also have your
visit beforehand.
Yes, visit beforehand, your basic salary, benefits package, additional benefits you may not consider. And then I think asking about the social media policy would be important in my opinion. Anything else you can think of? Anything from past jobs that you didn't think about beforehand and ended up being an issue?
No, I think referrals from associates or people you know go a long way. So I know that you can find jobs online all the time, and I'm not saying avoid those because they may be a good fit, maybe the location you want to go in. Definitely go check it out, but ask a lot of people. Tell people this is what I'm looking for. You may find a practice that's not actively hiring, but they will hire if it's the right person. So negotiate or networking and talking to people and asking those questions and let people know what you're looking for may come back to help you in 3-6 months before you're ready to take a job. So start that process early.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I always say if you put out what you want and what you're looking for and you really truly network, you will find the unicorn jobs that way, and you will find the places that fit you.
And quite honestly, sometimes those are the best practices because they don't have to hire, right? They're just looking for the right people they can add to their team,
right?
But they're not actively posting because they don't have a immediate need. They're looking for the right person, and it's a unicorn practice. And if you're the right person, it could be a good fit.
Yeah. It's more important to me if someone says, I know this person and they are a stand-up, hard worker, really love the profession, love what they do. That's going to go a lot farther to me.
If somebody calls us, have got a rock star that wants to be in Keller, Texas, we're not hiring for a vet right now, but I guarantee we might find a place for them, right? I mean, that's just the nature of owning your own business. You're always looking for those rock stars that you can't easily replace.
Yeah. No. 100%. So hopefully we gave some very basic things that you look for with a first job. But I think the main take homes are it's not just about the salary, and you want to make sure that it's a fit for you culturally and personality wise, because that is what is going to make you sustainable.
We didn't talk about non-competes in there. We did mention that on one of the other podcasts, but non-competes an issue to just be aware of.
Yes. I think that in general practice, small animal general practice, non-competes are going away in many regards, and you should really understand the difference between a non-compete and a non-solicit, and you should really have a deep conversation about that with any future practice owners. And we did do a whole podcast episode on it, so if you want to hear our full thoughts on it, you can definitely check that out. But hopefully we answered the question and we gave some good things to think about. I've talked to a lot of vet students and a lot of new grads, and these are my main takeaways definitely from
I would love some feedback if somebody says, yes, this was something that was helpful,
yes,
or this was clear as mud. I feel like we sometimes bounce around.
I would agree. I think that, we are also thinking through how we feel about some things, and it's always interesting to me how strongly I feel about some things that maybe I didn't even realize it.
We don't lack opinions.
We don't lack passion, that's for sure.
Yes.
So if you want to listen to more podcast episodes, you can check us out on Apple or Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you want to look at our faces while we have these interactions, you can check out YouTube. And we are on all the social media channels at Questions with Crocker.
We are not.
Actually, you are. Your face shows up on there. Oh, funny story, real quick before we end. I was getting a facial yesterday, and she told me that we popped up on her For You page, and she said, "Is that your man?" And I said, "Yes, he is." And she said, "Oh my goodness, he's so cute." And I said, "Yes, he is."
I thought you were going with, he needs to come in and get a facial.
No,
kind of like my hairdresser saying, "You really have a lot of gray hair. Yeah. We can take care of that."
No, she said that you were so cute, and it was fun to listen to us. So it was fun, hearing that feedback from somebody. We love feedback. If you want to leave us a review on any of the podcast platforms, that would be amazing. And we really appreciate you guys being here and listening. And we hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks so much.